Hi everybody, my name is Sudeesh Yezhuvath. I am speaking from Durbar Hall Art Gallery in Kochi, where I am having my show, Yours is Not a Reason Why. It started on the 16th of October and is to conclude tomorrow on the 29th. Today I'll take you through some of the frames and images and my thoughts behind those images. Let me start with this one right here. In a way, this kind of represents Auschwitz at a high level for me. I'm standing inside the gas chamber here now. I'm inside Auschwitz, inside the gas chamber and looking out. So we're trying to capture what it was to be suffocated to death and the difference between freedom and oppression. When we think about this, we are struck by the thoughtlessness of it all. The complete lack of reason applied by the masses that did all this work. And hence the title, Yours is Not the Reason Why. Is the note, the artist's note, which explains why I'm doing this exhibition. For me, as I stood at Auschwitz, as I visited the camp, what struck me was how human beings could descend to this level of cruelty, applying cruelty on other people with such enormity. So when I thought about how, and I kept thinking about how, I was struck by the fact that the ingredients that caused this Auschwitz to happen are present even today in many countries, in many places. And if we play with these ingredients in a dangerous fashion, there is every possibility of an Auschwitz repeating, and hence this show. In this image reminds us of how images can be misleading. This is a very serene, calm image, and what we see here, and if we look at it without the history behind the image, what we see is, as I said, a calm image. But if we look closely and are aware of the history, this is a pond where ashes of people that were killed at Auschwitz, many of the people that were killed at Auschwitz were dumped. So this is the importance of this image, wherein we need to look beyond what is presented as calm and beautiful. We need to go beyond the propaganda and see the truth underneath. And here, where we have the slightly longer shot of the image, the attempt is to remind everyone that Auschwitz is not somewhere far behind in our rear view mirror. It happened just 80 years back. It is close enough. Far more dangerously, it is still active amongst many of us. These were the accommodation for the barracks that hosted the prisoners in Auschwitz II, which is also called Birkenau. And in this image, you can see a reflection, which is an invitation for us to visit Auschwitz from today, and then come back to Auschwitz, come back to today from that Auschwitz. You can also see here the door frame, the door knob, which we can, and it is up to each of us to see whether we want to open this door and investigate Auschwitz, or we want to just simply shut out the history and live in our comfort zone. And from landscape, let me move on to architecture. Architecture, which is supposed to, its basic purpose is to ensure creation of living spaces, happy spaces for people, whereas here architecture has been stood on its head, and these are spaces of untold misery. And what strikes me when I look at these images is that these are industrial structures, which in a way is what Auschwitz was about. Auschwitz was all about providing an industrial solution to what is essentially a human problem, what is called as a Jewish problem, how to kill efficiently, how to make a people extinct. That was what Auschwitz was about. This image shows the separation that was there, existed within the camp, where families, individuals were separated from one another by with blocks being separated by barbed wire, and when people were found in between these spaces, they were summarily executed. Here we see a space where prisoners were executed by hanging in this case, by shooting in that case, for flouting camp rules. It is kind of, when you think about it, it is kind of very strange, because in Auschwitz, an average inmate's expectation of lifespan was about 3 months. But even in such a camp, the authorities could instill fear and enforce discipline through the threat of an execution. That is what we see here. And herein are the curatorial notes. The curators have placed this exhibition based on the feelings or the tremors that an individual, which is me in this case, felt when I visited Auschwitz-Birkenau. Of course, these come from my lived experiences, my current context, where I live, what I see, and the fears that I am faced with as an individual when I see genocide or human tragedy at this scale, and when I further reflect as to what it means for the future, not just as something that happened in the past. So these are indeed tremors that I got from Auschwitz. This is the entrance to Auschwitz-Birkenau, Auschwitz II. We might have seen this in many movies. This image is a one-point perspective with everything leading into just one aspect. This represents the Nazi ideology of all society being reduced to just homogeneity, the Aryans and their Aryan supremacy. The others have no place here. There is no diversity. There is no space for diversity. It is all based on the one. Language, culture, everything that converging into just one. That's what this image represents. And unfortunately, we see this even today in many different parts of the world where the convergence is just into one. This is the gate of Auschwitz I, and on top of this gate you can see here written in German, "Work brings freedom." So Auschwitz was an extermination camp which was disguised as a concentration camp. It was supposed to be a labor camp, but in truth it was an extermination camp. And another interesting dimension is, as I mentioned earlier, the whole positioning of this activity as something which is to do with work. It is all about trying to find a solution to a problem. So it is just reduced to the level of a problem and a solution therein. The whole aspect of human tragedy, the humanness of it, is all completely taken away from it and eliminated from it. And this is what allowed evil to become so banal within Nazi Germany. In Auschwitz, about 1.1 million people were killed. And when operating at this scale, they had to bring people from different parts of Europe for eliminating in Auschwitz. And these were the wagons that were used to bring people to Auschwitz. We repeat the images just to ensure that we get a perspective of the scale. And for me, these wagons represent the beginning of the end for prisoners in their journey to Auschwitz. Because in these wagons, they had suffocation, they had thirst, they had hunger, and finally death. These books have influenced me in my journey so far in this matter. These are books that speak about human tragedies. These are books that speak about the history of what really happened at Auschwitz, and these have helped me to develop my perspective into Nazi ideology, concentration camps, Auschwitz, and also helped me to understand how to extract the what really were the causes for this, and see whether these causes could possibly repeat. And here we see an image of a gas chamber which was dynamited by the Nazis as they were losing the war, just when the threat of defeat was imminent, possibly with a view to destroying evidence. In Auschwitz II, there were 4 such gas chambers, and they were larger than what was there in Auschwitz I. To me, from this image, what I get is the gas chambers are gone, but the ideology that made these gas chambers, the ideology that caused this human tragedy, is perhaps still flowing into where I stand and into my life. Initially in Auschwitz I, when prisoners arrived, they were photographed, documented. All their body hair was shaved off, and they were given these prison uniforms to wear. And their names were taken off, and they were just identified by numbers which were tattooed onto their forearms. This is how they were dehumanized. All dignity was taken off. They were not people anymore. They were simply numbers, and this allowed the guards to also just treat them as numbers, entities, and not as human individuals and lives. People came to Auschwitz with an expectation that they would be continuing to lead a life, whatever be the form of life. It was not expected that they would die, and most of them did not know that they were going into Auschwitz, so they brought their belongings with them, and these are prayer mats that the prisoners had brought. Nazis confiscated all personal belongings of prisoners with a view to using these belongings in whatever form possible in their war efforts. Even such things as prayer mats weren't left out. They wanted to use all these in their war efforts. So they collected all these, they stored all these, and it is well known that they extracted the gold filling from the teeth of dead prisoners and used those as well. Now we enter into the third hall of the exhibition, and in this hall you will find the personal possessions of the prisoners. These possessions, as I said before, were all stored and retained by the Nazis with a view to reusing these in whichever form possible to help German war efforts. And here you can see the shoes. These shoes tell stories of people that lived. These were shoes used by people that were lived. And now they are no more. They were all murdered because of an accident of birth, that they were born into a particular race or a religion. Here we see more personal effects of people. We can actually connect even with some of the human stories here, because these suitcases, boxes have names, they have dates of birth. So we see people who were perhaps 24, 25 when they came to the camp and they perished. Even prosthetic limbs or shaving brushes, such things that are so personal, were all items that the Nazis thought should be kept for future use. So the whole approach, from this we can get a view of the approach. The whole approach was one of industrializing the solution. It was all about an industrial approach to killing, to mass murder. Here you have crematoriums that were used in Auschwitz I. These, after the people were gassed, these crematoriums were used to burn the bodies. In Auschwitz II, such crematoriums were often not enough at all because of the volumes. Auschwitz II had much higher numbers and much higher volumes, and so often the bodies were burnt in open fields and not in such crematoriums. And here we come to the gas chamber itself, and this image actually reminds me of a very famous image by Van Gogh, which most of us might be familiar with, and that has a clear connection with Auschwitz. In these chambers, people walked in with an expectation that they would, I would not say hope, I would say with an expectation that they would continue to see and to live to see another day, because they were told they were going to be disinfected. But instead of water, what happened when they entered this chamber was that poison gas came out, and the gas ended those lives. The gas itself was supplied by large industrial corporations in Germany in these canisters. The gas that was used was Cyclone B. It was based on cyanide. Initially, it was not very effective, but as always, there is money to be made in war, and there is money to be made in extermination too. And so corporations conducted enough research and came up with this deadly gas which could kill thousands of people, and the average in Auschwitz being 2,000 in a day. And yet again, there is an aspect of the finding scalable solutions. I am well aware that I am talking about language which is used in corporate world even today. We will call scalable solutions to the problem. So initially, prisoners were killed by shooting, but then that was a very expensive proposition and it took time. So instead, after research, they found out that gassing people to death was far more efficient. These were glasses, cups, bowls that prisoners brought with them on their journey to Auschwitz. These have been collected and displayed, and it shows this is but a very small sample, and yet it shows the scale of the problem or the dimension of the human tragedy. These are the facilities provided to prisoners in Auschwitz I. Auschwitz I started as a simple prison camp, and then it was upgraded to an extermination camp. The facilities in Auschwitz I were hence far better than in Auschwitz II, because in Auschwitz II it was full scale and large volumes, and they couldn't provide, and they had no intention of providing any better facilities. This here is an image. This here is an image that impacted me quite significantly, and it haunts me even today. If we take this out of context, what we see here are children perhaps out on a picnic. The reality is these are young, innocent children walking to their death in gas chambers just for the fault of being born a Jew. We now come to the last image in our exhibition. These are the gates of Auschwitz, and Auschwitz is still open. Auschwitz is still existing among us, amidst us, and in the minds of some of us. It is inviting us to step into Auschwitz. However, let us remind ourselves of what really happened in Auschwitz. Let us remind ourselves of what will happen if we repeat in Auschwitz. So let us halt here. Let us not move forward. Let us put an end to these thoughts, these ideologies forever. Let me take this opportunity to thank my curators, Murali Cheeroth and Dr. Jayaraj Sundaresan, without whose tremendous support and hard work this would not have been possible at all. And I would also like to mention my friends, my architecture friends who gave a lot of their time from the very beginning of the show to keep moving this forward. I should also mention Lalit Kala Academy for providing this facility to hold my exhibition, and last but not the least, no such effort becomes fruitful unless supported by the people, the viewers, and I thank the viewers and the media for making this exhibition quite a success. Thank you.